Alright, hello everybody. Today is April the 14th. This is the first video that I'm recording since the total solar eclipse in Aries, and we're already starting to see events play out on the world stage, in the astrology community, perhaps, in your own perspective or what you're exposed to. You can see all sorts of things going down. And today, I won't be getting into the specific details of those kinds of difficult events that have been occurring around this eclipse, but I trust that you may have some inkling or understanding of what I'm talking about. And I would just like to start this one talking about some of the challenges that are inherent in the medium of making astrology videos, especially during times like these. And, I can understand how if you were to have a popular astrology channel, you wouldn't want to make content that basically creates alarm or creates some sort of sense of panic, or you don't want to incite fear and worry in your audience. But at the same time, there's a tendency that I notice in let's say just spiritual new age content in general, is that, let's face it, it's, when people are doing this as a business, a lot of people are coming to spiritual practitioners and spiritual entrepreneurs because they want to feel better about things, or they want to find a way to make an improvement in their life. And, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. But, I studied Hellenistic astrology with Adam Ellenboss. And one of the appeals to Hellenistic astrology, for me anyways, is that there's a certain level of no bullshit about it, right? That it's like getting back to the true tradition of where astrology came from, and it's not trying to sugarcoat if there are good things or bad things going on. However, still in the practice of, let's say, doing a natal chart reading for somebody, there's a certain you kind of have to walk a line where if you see that somebody has difficult or problematic things going on in the natal chart, you don't want to just lay it on them in a really harsh way that would upset them. You want to find a way to give them something that will help them manage those difficult things. Because the whole point, I think, of doing astrology in the first place is not to, just because there are negative, or, you can look at the chart and say, wow, this looks like some difficult things going on. You're not completely helpless without having a way to mitigate these energies, right? And the whole principle is, if you understand the dynamics at play, then you should have a way to mitigate the problems and have a better outcome, right? Although sometimes, sometimes there's certain things that are happening that are unavoidable, but if there's anything that we have, there's things in life that we have control over, and there's things in life that we don't have control over, that we at least have control over our own actions and our own reactions. And that if we can see that bad things are coming, that gives us an ability to prepare and respond in a more mature, responsible way, right? Now then, there's, I don't know. With that in mind, going into this video, the topics today that I have in mind are the fact that Mercury retrograde is conjoining Chiron, the wounded healer, in Aries, and the total solar eclipse took place in conjunction with Chiron, the wounded healer. And at the same time, Venus is in Aries as well, and Venus is approaching a conjunction to the North Node, which is also on my mind going into this video. And if we think about the significations of Aries, as I mentioned in my last video, there's something to do with Aries being the first sign of the zodiac, has a strong signification with youth, new things, the kind of young, childlike thing that kind of goes with, when you put the wounded healer with this, there could be healing around things like the inner child, or your early childhood experiences, or trauma from your childhood, or taking a kind of a retrospective with Mercury. Could be like journaling about things that and kind of unearthing things from your past and your childhood, or something like that. But with Venus is in Aries as well right now, and Venus is in detriment in Aries, because basically Venus and Mars have this polarity, and Venus, when a planet's in its own domicile, it's considered to be strong. When a planet is in the polarizing domicile, it's considered to be in a weakened position, right? And Mars and Aries sort of has this signification of having to do with being independent, being, which is also kind of funny if you think about it, because there's this thing that goes together with this, is that when you think about the youthfulness of Aries, the youthful child thing, the association is usually that children have more dependency on their parents, that like a baby is dependent on its mother, and that by growing up we become more independent. But here in this astrology, it shows in this archetypal map that the first sign of the zodiac is itself a kind of bursting forth, a individual thing, bursting forward, initiating its own independence, right? So one of the things that I was thinking of doing was that, actually a couple days ago, it was James Hillman's birthday. And I was considering doing a video on James Hillman's birthday, kind of talking about some of these ideas. James Hillman being in Aries, and James Hillman having this sort of independent streak or whatever, right? And one of the ideas, I'm not going to read it out of here, but this is a book that had a lot of influence on me, was James Hillman's The Soul's Code, which I strongly recommend. And, I haven't really prepared to read out of it or anything, but one of the ideas in the Soul's Code is this idea that the oak is in the acorn, right? This idea that the individuation, in some way we may already be individuated, or that the idea is that there's some basic blueprint. We each have this archetypal blueprint that you could use astrology to look at, and it's our individual path, our individual destiny is already there as a potential. We just have to let that unfold and play itself out over the course of time for that to actualize, right? But there's this idea that you could look at each child as like the tabula rasa, like a blank slate, right? Or you could look at the child as something that has an inherent individuality, an inherent alterity, its own agency, its own kind of will, its own personality that isn't just shaped by the environment around it, but it's part of the inherent being of what it is, right? And that that is already there in a kind of a seed form, and it just takes the circumstances to bring it out, right? I was also thinking about, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm going. I've got a lot of ideas. Maybe I won't go into all of them right now. The thing is, what I was saying about Venus. Venus stands for something different because Venus is all about harmonizing with others, being in harmony, being in tune with your, friends or your lovers or your relationships. And there's like certain, this is why Venus has a hard time in Aries, because there's this sort of drive to be independent, to be individual, to individuate, that is kind of at odds with the Venus dynamic, right? And what comes up for me about with this kind of stuff is especially the fact of, I don't know about you guys, but there's a certain thing. I was watching, it's almost like I've been trying to avoid TikTok, but I was finding myself getting caught in this trap of clicking those little shorts on YouTube. And, I don't know why I do this, because I don't really, there's a few creators who make those shorts that I'm starting to find that I appreciate. So maybe I shouldn't pan the whole format in general, but I'm not really into that kind of stuff. But I saw this girl talking about, in terms of being autistic, right? Having this sort of idea about yourself growing up that you're not like other girls, right? And going in this direction that's all about either identity, this whole identity politics thing about the identity of, oh, we're gonna get, yeah. There's a lot of stuff that just kind of puts me off about getting really caught up on your identity of being either male or female, or being socialized male or female, or being overly identified with a diagnostic psychiatric label, right? Now, they'll just be upfront. Part of the reason why maybe if it wasn't for my own, how I fit into this identity system, as I'm a privileged white guy who's a bit of a schizo, right? So, what am I supposed to do with that as an identity politics thing? Am I supposed to make little, YouTube short videos telling you about what it's like to be either I hide the fact that I'm schizo and I'm just a privileged white guy asshole, or else I talk about being a schizo and then think that, what happens with other, maybe you can watch some astrology videos about other astrologers talking about what happens with people with mental health problems that do astrology, right? And I have to fit into that category, right? Well, maybe you can understand why I don't want to fit into that category, and I want to express the fact that I'm an individual that's not going to be defined by strictly just by my biology or by whatever fucking, diagnostic category that gets forced on me by a system I may not even necessarily agree with, right? That has basically all sorts of negative associations with it. It's a no-win situation as far as I'm concerned. It's basically, just because I'm the white guys have had this position of occupying, everybody would take, white guys would rise up in the academia and rise up in the institutions and occupy a privileged space in society. So basically, if I don't want to side with the MRA guys or anything like that, but it's sort of like if you're playing this game where you have this identity that automatically fits you into this category, then it's sort of like, oh well, I guess you don't have any opportunity to contribute at all unless you fit into somebody's category, right? And so what part of these frustrations, have led me to consider that, I don't, this is the whole thing about Venus and Aries, right? That Venus is looking for group belonging. Venus is looking for friends. Venus is looking for something, that kind of stuff. But in there's something about the North Node, which in traditional astrology, like there's these certain like rifts, right? There's these certain splits where there's a certain kind of modern astrology where the North Node is all about your karmic life path that you need to follow, right? And if you look at the traditions of where this comes from, with Rahu and Ketu and stuff like this, there's this myth about a demon who tries to drink an elixir to give it eternal life, but then has its head cut off. And the North Node is actually the severed head of a demon that has an insatiable hunger, right? And this is really not, do you really want to make your karmic life path the insatiable severed head of a demon? No, I don't think so, right? And so when you're doing astrology, you always have to kind of try to resolve these contradictions, because you don't know who's watching in the audience, or what they're, they might be just annoyed if you don't have the same point of view of them, right? But the thing about the way that I'm using this is that there's something about Venus is sort of frustrated in this position because there's the conflicting will to individuate, the conflicting will to have group belonging, and then in the North Node is like the hungry demon that will never be satisfied. Does that sound familiar? And so the thing is about, like, it feels a little bit like being between a rock and a hard place sometimes in this sort of social atmosphere, because on one hand I can totally, I can kind of relate to this thing about, like, if, what's the point if I'm a straight guy, if I'm heterosexual, and there's like a gay pride parade, good for, it's not my time to have a party. I don't have to have the spotlight on me at if it's a gay pride week. If some person wants to talk, I don't have anything against people who want to transition or express their sexuality in different ways, but it's like I personally don't have those inclinations, and it's not about me. And if they want to have the spotlight, if they want to do that, they're welcome to, right? But at the same time, if you're looking, you don't want to create a situation where all the people of a certain identity category get pushed into a direction where, because I am a straight white guy, I can only hang out with other straight white guys and talk about straight white guys stuff, right? I'd actually prefer to go to the, I don't know why it is. Like there's this, it reminds me of there's this Jonathan Richman song called I Was Dancing in a Lesbian Bar that I think sums up the issue quite well, right? That, you would think that you're like, oh, we created a gay bar for gay people to hang out in. We created a lesbian bar for lesbians to hang out in, and we have normal straight people bars for straight people to hang out in, right? So, like, wouldn't it just make sense that there's this, it's kind of funny. I found out recently that there's this idea, like, have you heard the term to each their own? Apparently that, I can't remember where I heard this, but I just heard it recently, that apparently this whole thing, to each their own, had a racist origin. To each their own means, if you're a white person, to your own. You stick with your own tribe. All the white people hang out together, all the black people hang out together, all the gay people hang out together, all the straight people hang out together. And there's no conflict, because everybody just hangs out in their own insulated little communities, right? But the thing is, I think we can see that if you listen to the Jonathan Richman song, I Was Dancing in a Lesbian Bar, you can see that, the first bar was a little bit uptight. There's something about that dynamic, which, like, I can't explain it, but if you're in a bar where people are comfortable to be themselves, if gay people are being really gay, trans people are being really trans, and maybe these people are not sexually oriented, that they're potential partners or whatever. You know what? I'd like to go out dancing and not have to worry about the whole thing is just like a bunch of these pickup artist creeps, right? And just because I'm at the party, then people, you know, you can have a conversation with somebody and it's not just like, oh, is this person trying to pick you up or something, right? Or not the, you know what I'm trying to say? That they can have this more relaxed attitude that, if you go to a straight bar, there's not going to be girls dancing with their tops off, probably, right? But if you go to the lesbian bar, maybe there would be. I don't know. Like, there's something about it's more relaxed having, when people aren't, you don't feel like you're under some sort of strict control where you have to be like, this is the group for people like this is the group for people like that, right? But the same time, there's this thing like, there's a certain wanting connection, wanting belonging, maybe not feeling like you belong, but there's whatever, like, I'm just trying to say what has come up for me around these transits personally is the kinds of people who conglomerate together in like what you would call the manosphere, right? Or a bunch of hetero white guy club. I'm sorry, but it's usually a bunch of fucking nerds, man. Like, they're a bunch of frustrated guys who can't get laid, so they won't need to like this is what kind of like the Venus North Node thing. Like, maybe if I just like go to the gym and get fucking ripped, then I'll finally be able to get a girlfriend. Then I'll finally, if I just hang out with a bunch of other frustrated, hetero dudes, and then maybe that'll solve my problem, right? No, you just fucking compound the issue with a bunch of assholes that are exactly like you, right? I think it's better to have or the thing is, and then if there is no opportunity to have a more diverse group, what is coming up for me is that, maybe it's better, like, I mean, there's a bit of a conflict here because on some level, I think that there's a need for community that's sorely lacking in our society, right? But community isn't just a bunch of people who have the same identity, have the same preferences, have the same, community is like your old lady neighbor who needs her help taking their groceries in. Community is like community is like a bunch of people who may not necessarily agree with each other about everything, right? Community isn't a club where everybody has the same opinion and then or else they get kicked out, right? Community is like where you have an experience of a multiplicity of others who are in a dynamic together. It's not just a fucking in-group clique. You know what I'm trying to say? But when I'm trying, I don't know. Like, the thing too is that I personally, I don't relate to, or whatever. I've got this funny thing too where it's like, there's something about this identity category stuff where like, if I'm a white guy, there's like, if I have a certain kind of identity, there's supposed to be certain things that I'm supposed to like, or there's certain things I'm supposed to not like. And I can't help it, but like, go the other way sometimes, right? And for some reason, like, I have been listening to a lot of hip-hop music. I can't help it, I'd rather listen to, my personality, I would rather listen to some hip-hop than listening to some sad, like, well, fuck it, you know what I can say? I like the Smiths, though, right? So, I mean, is it a contradiction that if you like the Smiths and you like hip-hop at the same time? I can go for some indie rock, but so much of this sort of like the sensitive guy crying indie rock, I don't. It's not my personality. I'm sorry. I can throw on some hip hop and I can feel like I'm not the toughest dude in the world, right? I'm not like some gangster or anything, right? But there's this Aesop rock song that sort of like for some reason I was just drawn to this Aesop rock song that came out. I don't know. It was a few years back, but it's called Dorks, right? And it's like there's something about like this sort of climate where everybody there's like frustrated and isolated and looking for some kind of community or some kind of belonging, but it's like, I'm sorry, there's certain stuff where it's like I'm not gonna go hang out with a bunch of frustrated white guys because they're a bunch of fucking dorks. I'm sorry, right? And I'm not, if a bunch of gay people don't want me at their party, if a bunch of gay people don't want to talk to me, I'm not gonna hate on gay people for that. And it's like, if you want to, it's like having, where he says, party over here, I'll be over there, right? Like, I'm not gonna hate on any, like, I'm not gonna put any sort of, like, entitled expectation that, like, somebody has to be my friend, or that if, like, like, I have to, I'm not going to, like, this entitlement thing. Like, I'm not entitled to friends. I'm not entitled to community. And if I have to go my own way, if I have to do my own thing, I'll do my own thing, right? And part of this has to do also with doing astrology videos, and, like, straight up, okay, I wasn't maybe expecting to, like, go in this direction where it's just like turning my astrology video into the equivalent of dropping a hot diss track, but some things just have to be said. This whole scene that's like, what do you say, Gaia TV? It sucks. Gaia TV sucks. So there's a reason why the New Age has a bad reputation. There's a reason why, weird cults have a bad reputation. There's a reason why people who have astrology and tarot businesses have a bad reputation, and people think they're a bunch of grifters trying to steal your money, right? And I I've done astrology readings for people, and I believe in astrology, and I love astrology, but there's something about the structure that's built up around it as a community. I think it has a lot mainly just to do with how people make money, right? I think a great example of this could be Abraham Hicks, where she got, part of her whole thing was actually that she was involved in these multi-level marketing schemes, right? These pyramid schemes. And it's not, and even if you're not part of that explicitly, this whole influence permeates our culture, right? And I am, rather than being all like, oh, I'm sad, I'm lonely, so I'll just adapt myself to hang out with a bunch of, like, pyramid scheme, multi-level marketing, like, grifter bullshit people, what's been coming up for me around these transits is to have the strength, the personal strength of character to be able to stand on my own, do my own thing, and say, this is my astrology channel, and we're going to do things a little bit differently around here. We're not going to be, this isn't like we're going to put, like, cotton batton in our, if you see there's a really shitty, a really difficult transit coming up, we're not going to, like, pretend otherwise for the sake of selling some kind of, like, thing that's, gonna put people into some sort of, like, trance state where they're just like, everything's sunshine and rainbows while the bombs are falling around them, right? The whole point of this, what I was thinking is that I attributed this to Alan Watts. Although if somebody else was the source of this reference, maybe you can correct me. But I believe in an Alan Watts talk, he was talking about this, that it's, if a person is in a house and they're freaking out, they're scared because the house is on fire, and somebody is in a peaceful, calm state of bliss, like, it's the person who's peaceful and calm that's delusional. If the house is actually on fire, you better get the fuck out of the house. You know what I'm saying? If you're gonna be giving somebody astrology content, you don't want to just be, like, serving them up little pieces of cake, and, like, things, little treats that to make people happy or whatever. I mean, maybe there's nothing wrong with, helping people not get caught into the fear spiral or the panic spiral or anything like that, right? But the thing is, I think astrology is useful in the way that, like, it's like, if the same thing is, like, if you start your car in the morning and your check engine light comes on, right? You don't want, if there's a chance the check engine light might be coming on for no reason, like it's a glitch or something, right? Or is a false positive, right? But there could also be something wrong with your car, right? Or like the other thing is like if maybe you have a police scanner, right? So to see if there's somebody who's going to like catch you for having a speeding ticket, right? You know, if these technological devices are going to be useful, you have to have them show you when there's going to be a problem so that you know there's a problem so that you can deal with it. If you just have I'm going to fix my car by showing it so the check engine light never comes on, or that I'm going to have I'm just going to be in a blissed out state of being happy no matter what's going on. You know, I mean, you have to deal with the actual reality. You know, the appeal of astrology for me isn't because it lifts you up into like some magical world where all your problems are non-existent. No, it's actually something you can use to apply to have some perception of what the problems are and have an ability to mitigate said problems, right? Okay, I'm sorry if my tone is like yelling a little bit. You know, maybe this is a different tone than what other astrologers you might follow use in their videos, right? I'm just expressing, you know, I've got feelings that are coming up or whatever. Okay, but I think I've said my piece. I didn't, you know, like I said, I've said in my other videos. Sometimes when I make these videos, I don't exactly know where. I mean, I don't know. I got lots of ideas. I don't exactly know how they're going to turn out. Um, and it's like whatever. I don't know if this is helping or not to make a video like this, but this is basically this is me by taking my best shot to express how these transits resonate from my perspective and what my intentions are for continuing as an astrologer and continuing to make astrology videos, right? So, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel, and thank you for staying, you know, for my old followers. Thank you for continuing to stick with me. And yeah, I mean, there's just something about this individuation path that you have to be true to yourself, right? You have to be true. You can't. There's something to not. You have to balance these desires with Venus, but see that, you know, this hungry demon head that is insatiable, that may not get what it wants, and even if it did get what it wants, maybe it won't even be satisfied with it, right? And you have to look at that dynamic and have the courage to go your own way if necessary. Thank you very much for watching.